unprecedented deployment of North Korean troops to Russia, reportedly for involvement in Ukraine, has raised both strategic and ethical questions on the world stage. As Kim Jong-un's regime provides soldiers to Russia, countries like South Korea and the United States are closely monitoring the implications of North Korea's involvement. This move represents a significant shift in North Korea's stance on foreign conflicts, breaking from the country's long-standing isolationist policy and tradition of maintaining troops domestically for fear of ideological contamination. North Korea's decision to support Russia with both soldiers and munitions suggests an intensification of Pyongyang's relationship with Moscow, potentially offering benefits to both nations. For Russia, whose military resources have been heavily depleted, North Korean manpower could reinforce strained units on the battlefield. This alliance is reportedly grounded in financial incentives and the mutual goal of counterbalancing Western influence. The South Korean spy agency recently estimated that Russia would pay $2,000 monthly per North Korean soldier, generating millions of dollars monthly for Kim's cash-strapped regime. This influx of funds is crucial as North Korea's economy continues to face the strain of international sanctions. Beyond financial gain, the deployment provides North Korean troops with first-hand exposure to modern warfare, an invaluable experience that Pyongyang lacks due to its isolation. For Kim Jong-un, sending troops to Ukraine also offers a chance to strengthen ties with a powerful ally while gaining technical assistance from Russia on nuclear and missile technology, a critical area for the regime's long-term security ambitions. Both South Korean and U.S. officials worry that North Korea may seek advanced technology for nuclear miniaturization and intercontinental ballistic missiles as compensation from Russia. Analysts fear that North Korea could leverage this alliance to enhance its nuclear capabilities, specifically by obtaining technology to miniaturize nuclear warheads, to feed on ICBMs, or to develop multi-warhead capabilities. Such advancements would pose a profound threat to regional stability in Northeast Asia and potentially beyond. Russia's willingness to provide technical assistance to North Korea is uncertain but would likely depend on how deeply Russia benefits from North Korea's military support. If realized, this technical exchange could accelerate North Korea's nuclear program, altering the balance of power on the Korean peninsula and heightening the potential for nuclear proliferation. For South Korea, the implications of North Korea's involvement in Ukraine are twofold. First, there is concern that North Korea's participation in the conflict could set a dangerous precedent for Pyongyang's global ambitions. Second, this development has intensified debates within South Korea about its role in the conflict and whether it should consider providing direct military support to Ukraine. President Yoon Suk-yeol of South Korea has expressed willingness to support Ukraine if North Korean special forces are indeed fighting in the war. This would mark a notable shift in South Korea's policy, which has focused mainly on humanitarian aid to Ukraine, but could lead to revisions in South Korea's Foreign Trade Act, which currently prohibits sending lethal weapons to conflict zones. Public opinion in South Korea is divided. While some, particularly older generations, see the need to confront North Korea's aggression with equal resolve, younger South Koreans are hesitant about entangling their country in foreign conflicts. South Korean analysts and professors caution that involvement could strain South Korea's economy and alienate Russia relations, leading to further instability. North Korea's elite Storm Corps soldiers, who specialize in unconventional warfare, have reportedly been deployed to Russia to face what is for them an unfamiliar and dangerous terrain. Defectors and former North Korean soldiers suggest that many of these young troops, often in their early 20s or late teens, may have limited awareness of the risks they face. The unfamiliar flatlands of Ukraine, combined with advanced Western military technology, could pose lethal challenges for soldiers trained only on the mountainous terrains of the Korean peninsula. There is also the risk that North Korean soldiers, once exposed to life outside their homeland, might attempt defection, a concern for Kim Jong-un's regime, which heavily controls information to prevent ideological contamination. However, some defectors believe North Korean soldiers may view the deployment as a rare opportunity for economic gain and foreign travel, albeit under perilous conditions. The financial incentives and potential military advancements make this deployment appealing to Kim Jong-un. However, North Korea's involvement in a major international conflict also comes with the risk of high casualties, which could lead to domestic discontent and strain Kim's grip on power. Experts argue that the potential rewards from Russia, including technology transfers and financial compensation, must be substantial for Kim to take this big gamble. The presence of North Korean troops in Ukraine signals a new era in Pyongyang's international stance, transforming Kim Jong-un's regime from a closed-off power to an active player in a major global conflict. While the economic and technological benefits may strengthen North Korea's regime in the short term, the high risk of casualties, combined with the potential for ideological contamination, makes this deployment a double-edged sword. For Russia, the support bolsters its flaky resources, while for North Korea, it brings an opportunity to earn foreign currency and acquire technology that could bolster its nuclear program. Yet, the potential for significant losses and the dangers of military adventurism in foreign lands may limit the scope of this cooperation. How far North Korea is willing to go remains uncertain, but this new alliance could reshape global security dynamics, especially on the Korean peninsula.
Thank you very much. Wow. Well, I want to thank you all very much. This is great. These are our friends. We have thousands of friends on this incredible movement. This was a movement like nobody's ever seen before.
With Donald Trump's return to the White House, Ukraine faces a mix of anxiety and strategic recalibration in its ongoing struggle against Russia. Trump's past admiration for Russian President Vladimir Putin and his promises to quickly end the war, without offering specific details, cast uncertainty on the future of U.S. support for Ukraine, which has been instrumental in helping it resist the Russian invasion. This change in U.S. leadership raises critical questions about the trajectory of the Russia-Ukraine war and whether a Trump-led administration could expedite its resolution or fundamentally alter its dynamics. Since the start of the war, the U.S. under President Joe Biden has provided significant financial and military aid to Ukraine, reinforcing its position against Russian advances. Trump, however, has been outspoken in his skepticism about the extent of this support. He previously called for a quick end to the war, but offered no specific roadmap for peace. Some experts believe his administration might prioritize budget constraints over military aid, especially given Trump's earlier rhetoric questioning NATO's relevance and suggesting that European countries bear more responsibility for regional security. Ukrainian servicemen like Air, quoted in the report, express a grim outlook on this shift, with concerns that Trump might broker a peace deal more favorable to Russia. Trump's transactional approach to foreign policy, viewing alliances and aid as contingent on U.S. interests, could lead him to push for a ceasefire along current front lines, potentially solidifying Russia's control over occupied Ukrainian territories. This would be a stark contrast to the Biden administration's approach, which has emphasized continued military support as a means to pressure Russia into negotiating on Ukraine's terms. While Trump has proposed a swift end to the war, experts remain divided on how feasible his plans are. His peace through force philosophy might involve persuading both Ukraine and Russia to negotiate a ceasefire, but any peace terms would likely demand concessions from Ukraine, especially on territorial issues. A potential deal could recognize Russia's control over Crimea and parts of the Donbas, effectively consolidating Moscow's territorial gains and weakening Ukraine's sovereignty. However, whether Russia would adhere to any peace agreement is uncertain. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov cautioned that the U.S. remains a hostile state to Russia, despite Trump's apparent willingness to negotiate. Even if Trump pushes for peace, Russia's historical patterns suggest that it may not respect long-term agreements, especially if its interests or territorial claims remain unmet. Trump's return could lead to an intensification of fighting in the short term. Ukraine, fearing reduced U.S. support, might attempt a last offensive to solidify gains before any Trump-brokered peace deal materializes. Conversely, Russia could use this period to bolster its military advances, capturing additional territory to gain a more advantageous bargaining position. This could worsen the humanitarian crisis in Ukraine and strain already struggling resources, adding urgency to finding a diplomatic solution. Additionally, Trump's focus on other global hotspots, such as Taiwan and the Middle East, could limit the resources he allocates to Ukraine. His administration may prioritize reducing U.S. engagement in Europe to shift focus to perceived threats in Asia, aligning with his previously expressed goal of recalibrating America's global commitments. Such a pivot would likely increase pressure on European NATO members to shoulder more responsibility for Ukraine's defense, potentially leading to divisions within the alliance. European allies are likely to view Trump's return and his potential pivot toward isolationism with apprehension. Leaders across Europe may worry that any Ukraine peace deal brokered by Trump would prioritize U.S.-Russian relations over NATO unity, weakening collective security against Russian aggression. This scenario could embolden Putin, as reduced Western support for Ukraine might signal a window for Russia to assert greater influence over Eastern Europe, testing the resolve of NATO and the EU. If Trump pressures European nations to support his peace deal, it could destabilize the alliance. For NATO, this might mark a historic challenge, forcing member states to reassess their security commitments and reliance on the U.S. nuclear umbrella. Europe's lack of cohesive defense capabilities could further exacerbate vulnerabilities, making the continent more susceptible to Russian coercion. The path to ending the war remains ambiguous, and Trump's presidency adds complexity rather than clarity. His swift approach to peace might reduce U.S. involvement, potentially leading to a stalemate or a freezing of the conflict, but it does not guarantee a lasting stability. Any peace plan favoring Russia could, paradoxically, lay the groundwork for future confrontations by incentivizing Putin to pursue further ambitions in Eastern Europe. In summary, while Trump's approach could shift the momentum in favor of de-escalation, it also poses significant risks for Ukraine and Europe's long-term security. The potential reduction in U.S. support may force Kyiv to negotiate on less favorable terms or risk facing Russia with diminished resources. For Europe, Trump's policies could stress-test NATO's resilience and redefine the post-Cold War security landscape. Therefore, rather than ending the war definitively, Trump's presidency might lead to a new, unpredictable phase in the Russia-Ukraine conflict.